Good evening, everyone. All right. First of all, my name is Pete Nicholson. I'm the principal here at North Penn High School, and I want to welcome all of you to our course information night tonight. All of you that are in here should be parents of current 9th grade students that will be moving into 10th grade next year, or what we from now on will call the class of 2023. So welcome to North Penn High School. Some of you may have been here before, some of you may have had older children that have passed through. For some of you, this may be the very first time, and we want to make sure that you have all the information tonight that you feel is necessary to make informed decisions for course selection next year when your students are officially here at the high school. While they're in 9th grade this year and their courses count towards their transcripts, we realize that coming to 10th grade is a little bit of a different animal, and we want to make sure that you are all at home and all feel comfortable with this process moving forward this year. That being said, at the end of this, or at the conclusion of our prepared presentation this evening, you'll have the opportunity to ask some questions. We would like that to be general questions. If you have specific questions that may only really pertain to your child, to your student, please hold that till the end, and then you can come up and speak with any of us individually, and we'll do our best. But if you have general questions about what you see this evening, something that could serve the greater community and those that are watching live on television tonight, please ask. We'll do our best to answer any question you have and make sure that you have everything you need to know to make an informed decision. So again, welcome to North Penn High School. We're excited to see all of your children next year as the class of 2023. And I'm going to kick it over to one of the assistant principals in F40, one of the assistant principals for the class of 2023, Mr. Matt Edwards.
Thank you. Welcome tonight. I had a few things that I wanted to share, but since Mr. Nicholson decided to come up here and take them all, my presentation will be pretty short tonight. I'm kidding, of course, but I wanted to welcome you tonight to the high school, and I wanted to present that fact that you're probably going to hear that for the next 3 years. Welcome to the high school and a bunch of different events, and in what seems like a blink, it'll be 2023, and they'll be graduating. And it goes by just so fast. So just out of curiosity tonight, how many of you have a son or daughter this is the oldest, or maybe it's an only child and they're coming through for the first time? Awesome. Thank you. So I guess that means if you don't have your hand up then that you've had an older one come through, or maybe you just didn't feel like putting your hand up. That's okay too. But we wanted to thank you ahead of time for putting your trust in us. As a school district, that we have them for the next 3 years of their lives, and we hope that you have a positive experience and that your son or daughter has an even better experience. That begins tonight as you hear a little bit about our courses and about the things that we offer here. My job tonight is to introduce the presentation, but also to introduce our home office. You'll hear the idea of home offices up here at the high school, and since I saw so many hands, we'll kind of go through that a little bit. But our high school operates out of 3 home offices. They're all grade level home offices. Each home office contains 2 assistant principals, and we split the alphabet in half. And also, we have 3 counselors in our home office, obviously splitting it into thirds. We have a general secretary that takes care of things in our home office, and we also have an attendance secretary. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce the staff tonight. So obviously, my name is Matt Edwards. I have the first half of the alphabet. This is Amy Lynn. Amy has the second half, or the last half of the alphabet, obviously. And then we have 3 of our school counselors. We have Mrs. Jennifer Flacco. She has letters A through G. We have Dr. Nicole Yetter, who has H through M. And we have Mr. Sam Feeney, who is N through Z. Also listed up here is Mr. Pat Brett. He is in our Future Planning Center. He offers a wide variety of things for students, but obviously as we're thinking as we go along here in the last 3 years, and we're thinking about what do we do after and as we transition out of education and into a post-secondary career, into some area of training, that's what we're going to be focusing with Mr. Brett a little bit more. So what I want to do, and maybe just leave you with this before I turn the presentation over, is what I hear most often, and I've been here for about 1.5 years, is that the building is so large. It's so huge. And I have just this one student, and the students sometimes come and talk to us and say, you know, it's just such a large building. And the way that I've been able to sort of rationalize that and figure it out for kids is that the more they're involved, whether it be an activity or whether it's an athletic program or a class or something that they really get passionate about, the more that they're involved, the smaller the school becomes, because they're able to build those communities, they're able to build those relationships, and then this building that feels so big gets a little bit smaller. So I would encourage you in the best that you can, and if we have any students that are sitting here, get involved. Find something that you really enjoy, find something that you're curious about, and just start to build those relationships as you go, because you'll find that this building that's so large and then becomes a lot smaller. All right, so what I am going to do tonight, and Mr. Nicholson sort of took care of it, is just start the program, and I'm going to have Mrs. Flacco come up and start and begin. Once again, thank you very much. I hope you have a great night.
Good evening. So what you're going to hear tonight is a lot of information about what the high school can provide and offer your son or daughter as they transition from middle school. And really, as they transition from elementary school to middle school, you probably found that the middle school had more electives, more courses they could take, more activities or clubs they could join, or possibly sports. It's the same thing at the high school. So what we really try to stress to the students is you want to find a balance. And the balance for your child is going to be different than the person next to your child, depending on what they're involved with outside of school. So they may be possibly volunteering, they may be working or looking to get a job for next year. They may be in different clubs, they may be in 3 sports, they may be taking, a high level load of courses. So depending on what they're doing now, when they transition to the high school, they're going to have so many more options that they could do that'll be interesting to them. So we just really want to make sure that they do find that balance, that will kind of keep their stress level down as much as it can with moving into a building, like Mr. Edwards says, that is much larger than the building that they're in now. So recommendations for courses. Your child's teacher is going to be making recommendations for the level they believe they'll be the most successful in for next year. So how do they figure that out? How do they decide on what level they think would be the best? So they use the criteria of homework, of assessments, of tests, of what they see and how they see your child in the classroom day to day. And what they're going to do then is they're going to make a decision where, again, they feel your child will be the most successful. But it's not all their decision. It's going to be your child who's going to be in those classes and doing that level of work. So we really try to, again, stress to the students that you want to be involved in that conversation. So you want to make sure that you do speak with your teacher, you do speak with your counselor, and you make sure that you have the most information that you can to understand the level that you're being placed in. So the minimum credits for graduation. 23 is the graduation credit requirement for North Penn High School. And if you look up here, a way to kind of just very briefly describe it is most classes are a credit, or as they get up into senior year courses, they could be a half credit each. But as we look at English, so students have a minimum of 4 credits in English, a credit in English pretty much every year, but they could have more. They could end with 6 credits in English because they may want to take a creative writing class, but the minimum is the 4 that are required. For social studies, it is also 4, but again, they could end with more. They may want to take a psychology or a sociology class. And really, those extra classes that they're taking, they would fall in the arts and humanities. It could be, electives. It could be a world language. It could be an art class. It could be an FCS class, something that they would find that they would really enjoy. If you look at science and math, you need a combination of 7 credits. So that could be, depending on your student's proficiency, they could take 3 credits in math and then finish with 4 in science or vice versa. And again, that is something that your current child's counselor will be able to help explain that to you a little bit further if you need further clarification. And then you look at health. Each health class is worth 0.3 credits, so they'd be taking 3 years of health. Health 9, they're probably in, Health Decisions, and Health and Society. PE as well, 1.2 credits. They'll be taking a PE every year, but they could take additional health and PE credits if they wanted to. And then their electives. So looking at the credits and promotion. So you need 4 credits to be a sophomore. Your child is probably taking anywhere from 6.6 to 6.9 credits currently. They need 4 to be a sophomore, 11 to be a junior, and 16.5 to be a senior. We were at Penndale Middle School today, and I had a student approach me and say, well, how do I know if I'm going to have enough credits? And that's really what the 3 of us are here for, and that we will work with your child every year so that they completely understand the credit process, and most importantly, that they have all the credits they need. So your schedule, or your child's schedule for 10th grade, it will include an English, a required English class. Social studies, the requirement is American and history. It will be a math class, depending on what level math they are in now. Biology is the required science. They will have health, and they will have aquatics. And we are mentioning, as we go to each middle school, that aquatics is the required sophomore PE class. And I think now I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Feeney. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, and good evening and welcome. My name is Sam Feeney, and I'm going to kind of get into more of the technical and a little bit more of the minutia part of this, which again is fodder for a conversation with your child's current counselor at the 9th grade level, but something that you'll need to be aware of. Probably the biggest source of confusion, and depending on where your child is placed, dismay in the first few weeks of 10th grade is this question about leveling. Okay, so we're looking at leveling differences between the middle schools, particularly the 9th grade, and then how levels are seen at the high school. One thing they're going to talk about is, and this is in some ways for us the way that we're operating at the high school might be now moving a little bit more toward alignment with middle school, and in some ways the differences might become a little bit more stark. But for our social studies and our English, we're looking at the 4.0 level being offered, 4.0, 5.0, 6.0, and AP. However, for us, for the first time in science this next year, the biology that Mrs. Flacco mentioned will be either at 5.0 or 6.0 level. Okay, so we're coming into alignment a little bit more with the middle schools on those, as the math and sciences being 5.0, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why that's important for subsequent years as well as for sophomore year. You're going to be looking at going back to the leveling and how the recommendations are formed, and also then how by May 1st, you should solidify the level that your child's taking for each of these courses. There's a consideration for the workload that's going to accompany those. And that's, again, what you want to be able to have a conversation with your child's teachers, your child having a conversation. What's the expectation for the workload at this level or at this level? And really putting all the pieces of the quilt together to determine, where should I really try to push myself? Where should I say, okay, this maybe isn't a strong point for my studies, and not even really that's one of interest. How do we kind of moderate that with levels? So if you can look to the next slide. So this is an example. Mr. Joy from Penndale gave us this a couple years ago that I think is instructive. The levels that your child is in right now will be treated somewhat differently at the high school level. And where you're seeing the breakout is, for example, if your child's taking a 5.0 course right now, that 5.0 course may lead to a recommendation of either 4.0 or 5.0 here at the high school. And if your child's currently in a 5.0 course and then recommended for a 4.0 course, that is not as much of a demotion, we'll call it, whatever, but it's more a representation of what the 4.0 at the high school represents in terms of pace, rigor, work outside of class, as compared to their current course that they're in. Similarly, with the honors and the HP, you're going to see that breakout. This is a rough approximation of what the teachers are considering in their conversations with the high school teachers when they're making that recommendation. So this is something that can help you understand a little bit about what we see very often in the first 3 to 4 weeks of 10th grade year, is a lot of students who have tried to keep all of their levels the same, not recognizing that there's a potential for a much greater workload. We're not trying to have anybody just, take their foot off the gas, but it's just an awareness of how some levels are treated at the high school as compared to at the middle schools, and to be able to see that play out. So I just want to make you aware of that. Again, it's just more fodder for a conversation with your child's counselor. All right, next. Some new courses that I think are pretty exciting that you'll want to be aware of, that you can see this in the program of studies, are AP Environmental Science and Cybersecurity, both of which are open to sophomores. This will be the first time we're running them at all at the high school. And then one of the electives that actually would count toward a social studies requirement in senior year, but can be taken in junior year as well, is the African American Studies, African American History course offered through the Social Studies Department. So just something, if you have had a child go through before and you're kind of basing your choices for next year on what your previous, your older children had gone through, these are ones that weren't offered in the past. All right, next please. So there are a lot of AP courses. One thing I was thinking about with Mr. Edwards is that big capacity, as he was talking about, the overwhelming, the size of the school, the offerings and so on. When you have those greater resources, it's in some cases overwhelming, in some cases exciting, and that's something that our AP courses are offered. I went to a small high school in central Pennsylvania where we had 3 AP courses. And so to have 32 is pretty great, but it speaks to the need to specialize. As I tell my students all the time, nobody gets a PhD in everything. At some point in time, you're gonna have to decide, this is my thing, and this is where I'm gonna start to really hone in. And so, but there won't be an area of your studies that isn't going to be addressed by really, really top-notch classes. Okay, so just be aware of that. Specifically for sophomores, you're gonna see all the ones that are available here. Some of them are a little bit different, like AP Seminar is one where we recommend for students who maybe don't know which area they really, really wanna pursue, but they wanna pursue a rigorous course and not what to think, but how to think. That's kind of how I summarize that one. The AP Environmental Science is on there, and kind of all points in between. Check the program of studies. The program of studies, and also I'm going to talk about GPA in just a sec, but the program of studies will tell you about prerequisites and co-requisites. So something like AP Stat has a co-requisite or a prerequisite if you want it to count as a math credit. All right, as Mrs. Flacco talked earlier, there are some math courses that are going to be required. Anyway, just to know those types of things, and again, your child's counselor can walk you through that. All right, GPA class rank. If you go on to the North Penn website, and Dr. Yoder is going to show you how to get there in just a little bit, there's one link in particular. It says General Course Selection Info. On there, you can see all of the fun that goes into calculating a GPA, all right, if you really want to know, and if you want to estimate what your child's GPA is, weighted and unweighted, based on their current grades in 9th grade, you can go ahead and have at it. It's pretty complicated, but what it will count and what it will factor in is the rigor of their courses, meaning the levels, and then which of the courses count toward the GPA and which don't. So as a general rule, we're dealing now with seniors, class of 2020. The scores that we're sending, the transcripts that we're sending out to colleges, employers, scholarship organizations, and so on, include a GPA that is the end of 9th grade averaged with the end of 10th grade averaged with the end of 11th grade. And so that's why we talk about, your children are technically high school students already, even though they're in the middle schools. Some of them get that. But we're seeing now that where they currently are in 9th grade is a full third of what their GPA and class rank is that we're going to be sending out to colleges should they choose to apply to college. So an awareness of that really can help drive that home, and that may be something you want to learn for yourself a little bit on what's your kid's current GPA calculation, and then which of the courses that are going to count. And again, all that in that general course selection info link on the course selection page under the guidance department is going to be a really detailed breakdown of that. And that should be helpful and instructive if you're looking at, well, what are the implications of this and this? You can sit there and do the math yourself, which I think is really helpful. That might be it for me. Oh, NCAA eligibility. Sorry about that. One last one, NCAA eligibility. Mr. Brett is our go-to guy on that. He wasn't able to be here tonight, but he's our go-to guy on NCAA eligibility. And in particular, if your child wants to play Division I or Division II sports, and then they might actually be able to, then talk to them a little bit about core courses. Core courses are, your basic English, social studies, math, science, but then others as well. The NCAA Clearinghouse has a lot of information on there, but if you go through the program of studies, You're going to see the little running man, which I'm not going to do for you right now. And you're going to see that notation there. That means it's a core course. That's what you want. So you want to get 16 core courses for Division I. And then Mr. Brett in the Future Plan Center, he's available to meet once your child becomes a sophomore to be able to sit down and map out that road if that's where you think you're headed. All right, as you have questions as well, Mr. Nicholson noted it. You can be noting them as we're going through this process and then follow up with your child's counselor as we get through it. Dr. Yetter.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So I think it's time now to take a look at some examples of what your child's schedule could look like. So we're going to start very quickly with a 6.0 biology. One thing to note, the 6.0 biology does come with a lab period. So it's something to keep in mind as you're then mapping out what that would look like. With your English, social studies, math, science, there will be a lab included that would then take the place of another minor to maybe match up with health and PE. And then, of course, you have the opportunity for lunch and elective majors. So that's what it would look like if you were, kind of basing it off of a 6.0 with the lab. If you're basing it off of 5.0, technically it looks the same minus the lab, opportunity for a minor to insert there, or even a study hall period. So something to note there as you're going through and you're planning through. Also, as Mr. Feeney had mentioned, this is where it really comes into play with the schedule of aligning the prerequisites or co-requisites that go with the courses. Also, if your child is not proficient on the Keystone, they may be recommended for an extended geometry course. That is due to the fact that they're not proficient, so built into the geometry class, so they passed Algebra 1, they're still eligible to move on to the next level, but we offer Geometry Extended. That extension piece covers the Keystone material from Algebra 1. This way gives them the opportunity to then retest and to hopefully become proficient on the Keystone. So that's that math period. It meets 8 times this cycle. Just to kind of clarify, we run on a 6-day cycle, A through F. So what this would tell you, with it being 8 periods, or on an 8, it would be every single day, and then 2 times during the cycle, it would be twice a day. That would be the lab, if you will. For any of your children that are part of North Montco Technical Career Center or thinking of going into that, please know that our students here at the high school in incoming 10th grader go in the morning. So they start their day in biology, and what's nice about that is all the students in North Montco are in the same biology courses together because we let them out a little bit early. So they're all together, so they're not missing instruction from another course. So they start their day there. Then they walk over to North Montco, where they spend 2 periods. They come back. They all have lunch simultaneously, and then they move on to the rest of their schedule here at the high school. About North Montco, if there is interest there, if your child is thinking of North Montco or already is, they do earn 2 credits for attending North Montco for their cluster that they're in, and they're also opening an open house this February 6th for you and your child to go over and to explore all the wonderful offerings. So I'm going to pass it over to Mrs. Lynn, who's going to cover our timeline.
Good evening. Okay, so today, so for the last, couple weeks, teachers have been making recommendations for your students and what their course placement should be for next year. This afternoon, the Parent and Student Portal opened up for students to go in and see what those recommendations are, as well as you. You will have until the morning of Monday, February 3rd, to go in and make any changes or selections. Any of the core courses for English, Social Studies, Math, and Science, those courses will have a lock next to their recommendation, because those are courses that you can't go in and change the level up or down from what the teacher recommended. But instead, those conversations have to happen with the student and the counselor, who can make those changes based off of criteria. If they want to move up, they have certain criteria that they have to meet. If they want to move down, have conversation as to why they want to take a level lower than what was recommended, but the counselors can make those changes. If the lock button on the screen is not locked, it means your student was recommended to take Spanish 3. But you have the choice of taking that or dropping that for another elective. So you'll see courses that they're recommended to take that you have the freedom to delete or add to. So this is where you'll be able to go in and add in your art classes, your creative writing, any of those elective subjects that you'd like to take. But you'll have till about 8 o'clock Monday, February 3rd to make those requests. And then everything will turn into a read-only mode. And then all changes after that, you have through May 1st to make those changes. Will go through the counselor. Okay, so we've made reference about the program of studies. So that's found on the North Penn High School website. You'll go to the high school website, you'll click on Our School, and from there you will go to course selection, and you'll see all the different portions of our program of studies. We've kind of broken it up into course listings, documentations, information on North Monco Technical Career Center. In our program of studies, we've actually embedded videos with next to the course title to give you a better understanding of the course offerings that we have. So again, the 9th grade counselors will be going through all of this with the students in the next week. So I know the big question seems to be, how do you access this? So using the mobile app, which was turned on today, you now have in the parent portal something called Academic Plan. And from there, you'll click on that and follow the prompts that will take you to a career plan that kind of shows you the recommendations. Okay, so if you have specific questions regarding Infinite Campus or having trouble accessing that, we do have tech support out in the auditorium lobby who can answer any questions there. As I said, counselors at the middle schools, as well as our counselors here for our students, will be meeting with students in the next next coming days to go over the course selection process and really walk the students through the academic plan. Right now, we only have one academic plan set in place for our students, which is just called an academic plan. So all of our students right now are on the same plan. Down the road, we may have more options, but as we get started with this new student management system, that's what we're working with. So that pretty much concludes our presentation for you this evening. We do have department chairs in the concourse and in the auditorium lobby who are there to answer specific questions regarding their course contents, could kind of highlight some of their offerings. As Mr. Feeney mentioned earlier, cybersecurity is new. It is an honors level course. It has no prerequisite, and it's open to all students. Our AP Environmental Science also does not have a prerequisite, which is why it's open to all grade levels. So what we're going to do now is kind of open it up to any general questions that you may have based off of our presentation. If you have a specific questions, our counselors are going to kind of be floating around to try to answer those, but you can also feel free to exit to the auditorium lobby to answer or ask questions of our department chairs. Do we have any questions? Okay, right over here. Are required majors always taken in the morning? No, that was just kind of giving you like a sample 8-period day, what it is. Our majors are offered all through the day. But that actually leads me to an important, I know sometimes we get a lot of requests that my child's an athlete, can they have study hall 8th period? And that is a very difficult request to make here at the high school because we have very limited minors or study halls that are offered 8th period. So they tend to get a required course at the end of the day. Okay, Mr. Edwards, you have a question over there?
My question was for the North Monco Tech Career Center. It says it's 2 credits. Is that per year, per term, or is it
per year?
Per program?
Yes,
per year?
So they can walk out, if they start in their 9th grade year, they can walk out with 8 credits that they've earned through the tech school. And one of those could count as their humanities credit. I saw a hand over here. So the question is, with the biology lab, can it be taken during a lunch period? Yes, we do have some students who take a full load and opt to give up 1 period of lunch. Our caution to all of our incoming students and our current students is really gauge that. That's a long day to go without having lunch. So we do have some students that do that, but think of the workload balance that Mr. Feeney talked about earlier in the presentation, or maybe it was Mrs. Flacco, but yes, they could give up a lunch period. Okay, we have one right here, and then we'll move over.
The students are picking up their courses with their guidance
The question was, are the students picking their courses with their counselors in the next couple days? Yes, they will receive a general presentation. I believe at the middle schools, each one does something a little bit different, but they go into the classes and maybe they go into a science class or an English class and have all the students go through and pick their courses. The portal's open, so parents, you can have those conversations with the students, your child now, and look at what courses they've been recommended for and what they want to take. We got a couple questions over here. Elective majors, are those first come? No. Students get to pick their first choice, and we do ask students to select an alternate because not every course can fit in with the constraints of what they select. So if we have such a wide variety of offerings that most students get the elective choice that they want. Some of our courses are capped by class sizes, and so some students can't always get their first choice. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but it's not like we say we can only take the first 15 kids that sign up for this course are the ones that are going to get it. Cybersecurity. We don't know what the enrollment will be like with that, and we may be limited on number of sections that we can offer, and in that case, priority tends to go with our upperclassmen and then down to our sophomores because they'll have more opportunity to take that. So it is not based off of first come, first serve sign up. It is based off of availability though. So, go ahead, Mr. Edwards.
My other question was for traveling in the classroom through the corridors. Are the 10th graders set to a certain section? Is it broken in a pod? Is it broken into like 2 or 3 corridors? Is it like all over the school for their continuing classes? Like, do they have to go to J Hall and then Z Hall? Or
Great question. So we are divided by pods. We are not grade specific. So they can be going from K pod to B pod. Our departments are pretty much departmentalized in pods. B pod is primarily world language with a little math. But they will be going back and forth and traveling the halls with 4-minute passing time with the upperclassmen as well. As long as they don't stand around and talk, and if they walk from class to class, yes, they can make it. Okay. Again, if you have specific questions, feel free to check out with a counselor or with a department chair, but we'll keep going with the general questions as long as we need to.
Do you offer SAT prep courses, and around what time do you suggest that the kids take SAT prep courses?
We do offer SAT prep. It typically is a mix between 10th and 11th grade. I feel like it's heavier in 10th grade. So yes, it is a 2-period minor that students can take, and there's 1 period that's English, 1 period that's math. That's awesome. Mr. Edwards? Oh, okay, and there's someone back over there as well. Go ahead.
Some of the classes require an application or an audition. Classes, what do you put in course selection? And when are those auditions?
So courses that require an application or an audition, you'll still select the course that you want with the counselor and submit the application and follow up with they'll be in contact about the audition. And if they don't meet the requirements, then they'll be given time to select another course. Do we have teams here at the high school? We do not. Our courses are mixed grades with primarily the exception of your English class. And like social studies and math in your core courses, but all the other courses are mixed grade levels. So we do not have teams. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Edwards.
Yeah. There we go.
Considering the size of the school, is there any opportunity for students to have a special tour during the summer to get familiar with the school?
Another great question. We do offer sophomore orientation. So prior to school starting, sophomores will come here for a half a day. I have my back to the camera, which is making me nervous. And that is more of link activities. And then that evening, we offer a sophomore orientation picnic where students can come and tour the building, walk their schedule in a less formal way with people posted throughout the building, so it kind of makes it a little less intimidating. Thank you. Mr. Edwards is going to go around with the mic. Go
Yeah, no
ahead.
problem. I can be mobile.
Thank you. With North Monco, I assume that the 2 credits are major credits, but do they also take a minor then also? Should they be looking at that?
They do have space in their schedule, as long as they're not in the extended geometry class, to fit in a minor, yes, or they can get 2 study halls.
My question is about the leveling and how that affects GPA. So if my son, say, was taking a 6.0 versus a 5.0 and got a B in a 6.0 versus an A in a 5.0, how does that affect the GPA? Because the other thing is, like, we never see the GPA on the report cards that we get and stuff like that, so I have no idea what his GPA is at this point.
And that is a very complicated question to answer. And I'm going to suggest that that is when you speak with the counselor directly. That's one I really need to look at the program of studies, and I can't answer off the top of my head because it's such a complicated process. But GPA does show on our transcripts moving forward here at the high school. So even though it doesn't show on the report card, we do keep it. And I believe in Infinite Campus, it's also going to be viewed by next year in your portal, that you'll be able to see it. So not trying to avoid the question, it's just a complicated, not easy answer to give, and I don't want to misspeak. Okay.
Back here? All the way back? I know I'm coming from the back of the auditorium.
All the way in the back.
All right,
okay.
Here we go.
What are the requirements for the Engineering Academy?
What are the requirements for the Engineering Academy? Again, that's a specific question that I don't know off the top of my head. That you need to fill out an application, and the criteria for that will be in there. I know you have to take Introduction to Engineering and Principles of Engineering, but other specific criteria, Mr. Reichwein is right outside these doors, and he would be able to answer those specifically. So I know we have some other questions that we'll continue to get to, but I also want to make sure parents know, please feel free to get up and ask counselors individual questions or the department chairs, but we will continue answering questions.